All right, guys, so let's talk about the Yankees roster here heading into the 2026 season. And I know there's a lot of disgust in the Yankee fandom over this bench, especially J.C. Escarra, Paul Goldschmidt, Amed Rosario, and Randall Grichuk. And one of the things that strikes me actually the most about this roster, although, the inclusion of Randall Grichuk over Jason Dominguez, over Spencer Jones is obviously the notable thing that everyone's going to be mad about. The amount of responsibility being placed on Amed Rosario's shoulders is not something that should be lost on people either. Very clearly on this four-man bench, he's being expected to be both a backup infielder and a backup outfielder, essentially. Because, the outfielders in the team, Trent Grisham, Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, and, hopefully you don't have to think of Giancarlo Stanton as an outfielder anymore. You can just be a DH now, but I'm sure they'll try him out there. He's almost 30. He's 36 and a half. I really wouldn't like to see him out there, but Amed Rosario does actually, I've said his strongest defensive position, according to metrics, is actually right field, strangely enough. And when they acquired him, I said that one of the things he was going to be doing was being an injury replacement potentially for Aaron Judge. And I think that's a really important thing to the Yankees here, although arguably too important, and that's outfield depth. And being able to assure outfield depth if these outfielders they have in the starting lineup get injured over the course of the season. Like I said in my Spencer Jones video, I think the big part of the reason why they sent Spencer Jones down is in case of an injury, being able to bring him back up in the middle of the season and plug him into the already existing lineup. I think they prefer that than trying him out against major league pitching from opening day. But it also sticks out that there's very little power on this bench. It's very hard to even project power onto this bench. J.C. Escarra is a great story, 15th round pick being signed from Indie Ball. I'm sure Brian Cashman is very proud of himself for finding J.C. Escarra. And, it's very easy to see when you look at this Yankees team and this Yankees lineup how Brian Cashman's ego is involved in this team in the way that it always is. Especially with the fact that, you'd think that the whole Anthony Volpe project, how he just sticks by Anthony Volpe continuously. The fact of the matter is, I think that if Anthony Volpe was healthy, you would be looking at a roster that actually does have Anthony Volpe on it and no Jason Dominguez and no Spencer Jones, which is atrocious. And I think, once again, the whole Randall Grichuk thing goes back to Cashman's ego, wanting to bargain hunt, wanting to find that next Matt Carpenter, which I'm going to be honest, I don't think Randall Grichuk is. Randall Grichuk doesn't have that much power. He strikes out over 20% of the time. And, part of the reason I was okay with sending Spencer Jones down, and maybe even I could be okay with sending Jason Dominguez down, depending, is because the corner outfield is one of the deepest positions for offensive talent in the MLB and one of the easiest places to get depth and to find depth, especially for an organization like the Yankees who have plenty of resources, or who are at least supposed to have plenty of resources. But the fact that J.C. Escarra is the backup catcher, it shows a lack of depth in this organization. There's a lack of depth in this organization in quite a few places, including catcher. I don't know what their plan for catcher is beyond Austin Wells. Austin Wells is a great catcher. I like Austin Wells a lot. He's one of the better parts of this lineup. Right now on Fangraphs, he's listed as the 9-hitter. I doubt you see that very often during the season. Austin Wells, it's an incredibly strong middle of the order for the Yankees, actually, in my opinion. Trent Grisham, Aaron Judge, Bellinger, Rice, Stanton, Chisholm, and Austin Wells to provide power as well, though don't get me started on Ryan McMahon. If Ryan McMahon wasn't a lefty, he wouldn't sniff this roster, and that's the truth. I think if Ryan McMahon wasn't a lefty, he probably wouldn't still be in the league, to be honest with you. I know that's harsh. But there's good players on this roster. I think there's good fundamentals on this roster. I think that's something they're looking for with players like Grichuk, Rosario, Goldschmidt, Caballero. These are guys who don't make a lot of mistakes. I know Caballero made some, errors early in his Yankee tenure. But that's, of course, to be expected for guys who play a lot of positions. I think there's a lot of talent on this roster. There's a lot of professionalism on this roster. This is a team that isn't going to get rattled. But in this division, that doesn't really matter. That doesn't really count. I think the Red Sox are particularly young, particularly talented, and are going to have, some energy that this team's just going to lack. I'm worried about them, but I'm obviously a lot more worried about the Blue Jays. I don't think that this team has the offensive chemistry or just the team identity of the Blue Jays. I don't think a team that provides itself on, being professional and business-like in the way that the Yankees tend to do, and in a way that I feel like this roster is kind of going for, actually. That doesn't beat, the youthful vigor and the nonstop offensive aggression of a team like the Blue Jays. It doesn't compensate for that. This team is still very obviously, pitch around Judge, attack the rest of them, right? That's still got to be the offensive strategy, and there's going to be plenty of stretches of this season where Judge is the only thing holding things up, the only thing keeping the offense afloat for weeks at a time. We've seen it season after season now. And yes, we know who they're going to replace Grichuk with if he doesn't play well. But the truth is, I think he's one of the candidates on this bench to have a good season. If Goldschmidt doesn't play well, what do they do at first? If J.C. Escarra doesn't play well, I know that he's a lefty and he's good defensively, but what if he puts up such bad offensive numbers they have to send him back to the minor leagues? What do you do at catcher? And if you don't consider Jose Caballero and Anthony Volpe to be great players, which I know I don't, I know most Yankee fans don't, they don't have great depth on the infield either unless you're super excited about George Lombard. And Jason Dominguez is still 23, but it's just funny how this team has approached his development relative to other players in our own organization, relative to other players around the league. And that's the sad thing about Jason Dominguez is I'm not actually as optimistic about Jason Dominguez coming back and having a prevalent role on this team in the future, to be honest with you. I think that sending him down to AAA, it makes me a little more pessimistic about the Yankees approach with Jason Dominguez. I think that the sad truth is that Jason Dominguez kind of peaked as a prospect when he was very, very young. And a big part of people profiling Jason Dominguez and the talent profile that he had was that people expected him to get bigger. And I think he's still 5'9" or 5'10". And I'm a short guy. I believe that you can be an extremely talented baseball player and be short. There's plenty of short, talented baseball players, plenty of great short hitters. But I think that people were expecting his body to genuinely grow more and for him to be larger and have a larger frame when he got up to the major leagues by this time, and that hasn't happened. Some people grow at different times in their lives, and there's really nothing you can do about that. You can't force Jason Dominguez to grow into a different frame. And I think, sadly, even though he's an extremely talented player, a good switch hitter, especially when he's a hitter who's, batting profile tends towards power, towards hitting the ball in the air, and he does strike out at a high percentage. Sure, playing in the Bronx, playing in Yankee Stadium, playing in a good offensive environment can cover for that, but being a bigger person can also cover for that. It's a much better way to cover for that, unfortunately, for Jason Dominguez. But I think there's also plenty of organizations in the MLB that would believe in his talent. And I think that the reaction around the rest of the league to when it comes to analyzing his projected ceiling, has gone down more than it probably should have. I think that Jason Dominguez in the future is actually going to be a very good player for a team that really gives him a chance. And Yankee fans do want him to really be given a chance. And I think that the optimistic side of me says, Jason Dominguez is going to get a chance to play in AAA, and that the level of pitching in AAA is much higher than it used to be. And that I don't even think that Jason Dominguez can't handle that, decent level AAA pitching that exists now, where you do have a ton of nasty pitchers, albeit, when I think of a AAA pitcher, especially a AAA reliever in 2026, I think of somebody who still pitches high 90s. They probably just don't have the control to stay in the major leagues, or they haven't really developed a strong enough secondary pitch that isn't getting, whacked out of the yard to be able to stay in the major leagues. Jason Dominguez is a really talented baseball player. I think those are pitchers that he can handle. But I don't really know how optimistic I can be about this Yankees team, and when it seems like so many people on this roster are just here to eventually be moved back down, to be DFA'd, to be moved off the team, when injuries happen, when poor performances come to light later in the season. This seems like an opening day roster that is going to be nowhere near what the Yankees roster is like at the end of the season. And I hope so, because looking at this roster right now, this isn't a team that can even, in my mind, honestly, this isn't a team that can even compete for the division. I would expect this team pessimistically to come third behind Boston, and of course Toronto, and optimistically to compete for the division and fall short. Even in my optimistic estimations, I don't see this team winning the division unless Aaron Judge hits 70 home runs or something. And this is all with the caveat that the pitching is what it is, that I love the pitching, that I have very little complaints about the pitching. I think the bullpen depth could be better, definitely. But I think it's a similar thing. I think you're going to see a bunch of moves from the Yankees over the course of the season to figure out and to just get this bullpen tinkered with and actually working piece by piece. That's something that you see teams do all the time, contending teams, even non-contending teams. They just figure out their bullpen over the course of the year. So I'm not really that worried about the bottom half of the bullpen, even if, some people are on the internet are probably out here screaming about Paul Blackburn and Cade Winquest. That, I think you have to understand how these baseball executives think in terms of risk, right? They don't want pitchers up there that are going to be too. I think a lot of these young prospects who might have better arms, who might have better stuff, who might have higher potential, they don't want them up in the major leagues because you don't want them giving up too many walks, too many runs, and getting blown up too bad, ruining their development. If some of these pitchers that the Yankees have down their bullpen get blown up too bad, it's not like that hasn't happened before in their major league careers, and I don't mean that with any disrespect. But, maybe I should have made a way more unhinged and biased rant video where I talk about how the Yankees are going to come in fourth place this year. When I say that I see a team that is literally designed to send a bunch of these players back down to the minor leagues and replace them. But that is what I think about quite a few players on this roster, especially down the bullpen. And honestly, I'm going to be honest, guys like Grichuk, guys like Escarra, maybe even a guy like a Caballero, right? I mean, the Yankees are looking for people who are expendable. So to me, it's not necessarily an, oh, what happened to the standards? Oh, this team is trash kind of situation. Because to me, I kind of understand what I'm looking at from, trying to put myself in the perspective of a modern baseball executive when I look at this team. This is a risk balance kind of roster, right? They're putting a bunch of players on the roster that fans won't have high expectations of, so they don't look stupid when the players do bad, right? And it's sad that that's how modern sports are, done, but we live in an image-obsessed society, and I've always seen Brian Cashman as being something of an image-obsessed GM. And I think he wants his pats on the back when, all these pitchers come off the IL healthy. I think he wants his pats on the back when Spencer Jones comes up and does well. I think he wants his pats on the back when Jason Dominguez does great in AAA, comes back up and, finds a new level in the major leagues. I think they're hoping that's what happens. But again, maybe I'm being too optimistic thinking that this roster that, to be honest, at first sight here is substandard and just trying to find an industry level justification for it, when I think that this team should probably be even younger in a lot of spots. They're not quite as old as I thought they were going to be, but it's still got to be one of the older rosters in the league. So let me know what place in the division you think the Yankees are going to finish this year. I think the Yankees are going to finish second. I think it's going to be a little closer with the Red Sox there in the middle. I think the Blue Jays will probably win the division. And the Yankees and Red Sox will be some certain number of games behind, 5, 7, 10. But the Yankees and Red Sox will probably be bunched up there in second and third. The Red Sox being a younger, more exciting team with maybe a little bit worse depth than the Yankees, being a little deeper, a little more professional, a little bit older, but not with quite that youth movement that I think is going to drive the Red Sox this year, although both teams have excellent pitching. And I ultimately think it's the level of pitching, really, between the Yankees, Red Sox, and Blue Jays that makes them the best three teams in this division. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the Yankees roster. Let me know what you guys think about the Yankees roster crunch this year. Let me know if you guys would rather see Dominguez and Spencer Jones getting starting at-bats in AAA or being really honestly on the bench in the major leagues, because fans have to accept that. There was no way in starting minutes, either of those players, Dominguez or Spencer Jones, once Trent Grisham, and especially once Cody Bellinger were back on the team this year. And to be honest, I don't want 29-year-old Trent Grisham or 30-year-old Cody Bellinger off this team yet. I think this team still needs to have the ambition of winning the division, winning the World Series. And if you don't have that excellent outfield, this team is a shell of what it should be. So I think that's why that outfield depth is so especially crucial. But yeah, let me know what you guys think the Yankees are going to finish. Let me know what you guys think about the Yankees roster, and I'll be right back here on the next one. Like and subscribe. Peace out.